Welcome back to my channel for a short Hasselblad X2D episode. And the X2D is a brand new camera brought to market by Hasselblad, 100 megapixel sensor, cropped medium format, so 44 x 33 millimeter. And I had the camera now for a few days testing it out, and this video is all about long exposures and image quality if you shoot with long exposures on the new X2D. Let's kick off the video. For this video I did shoot long exposures with two lenses. One is the XCD 55mm. In full frame equivalent terms, this is a focal length of give or take 43mm. And the widest open aperture on that camera lens combo is f2.5. And the second lens I want to use for long exposure shooting is the also brand new lens, 38mm XCD. f2.5 is the widest open aperture. And in the full frame equivalent field of view setup, this would come down to 30mm and the widest open aperture of f2.0. Let's look into exposure control on the Hasselblad X2D. And first of all, I recommend for long exposures at nighttime, for instance, to go into fully manual mode. So currently I'm in aperture priority. I can switch now here to manual mode. And I should probably have a slower shutter speed here so that we see something in front of the camera. Alright, you can also switch into manual mode by using the touch screen. Let me quickly show that. If I swipe down here, I have here the shooting or exposure modes, and then I can switch to manual. So far so good. When Hasselblad say manual mode, they actually mean manual mode. And in contrast to many other cameras from other camera brands, you have no auto ISO function in the manual mode. And if I go here to the ISO button, I can go from the native ISO of the camera sensor, which is 64, up to 25,600, but there is no auto mode here, in contrast to aperture priority and shutter speed priority, where I actually can set the camera into auto ISO mode. I personally find this a bit inconvenient because I like from time to time to fully control aperture and shutter speed, but let the ISO freely float and determine the camera what the right ISO value is to get the right exposure. And that's not possible here if you're in manual mode. You really need to know your ISO value and need to figure it out yourselves. That's why I said when Hasselblad says manual, they mean manual mode in the meaning of the word. You need to figure out yourself what sensitivity you want to shoot with. If you want to change the exposure time or shutter speed, we can tap here, for instance. We can also do this via a control wheel if we want. And then we see that this 55mm XCD lens, which is currently mounted, can go with the leaf shutter as fast as 1/2000 seconds. And there are lenses, and I think the 90mm, the new 90mm XCD lens is one which can go even faster to 1/4000 seconds. Since these XCD lenses all have a leaf shutter which sits in the lens, you can also flash sync at all of these speeds, which is very convenient. It is one of the big advantages you have in the Hasselblad X system. Now, we don't want to talk about freezing moments by super fast shutter speed. We want to talk about long exposures. So let's see what we can do here. If I scroll here a little bit, we come to 1 second. We have bulb mode, we have time mode, and then we can go very, very, very long on this camera. Actually, and I shared this in my intro video about the new X2D, up to 1 hour and 8 minutes. So that's 68 minutes, and that is a very long time, of course. Typically, if you go that long for exposures, you will have some hot pixels because the sensor gets very warm. But I at least tested now a few minute shots, and that all worked very well. And that's the main purpose of this video, to show you how long exposures look if you shoot them with the camera. And with these two lenses I showed before in the intro of the video. What I'm going to do next is I want to show a quick clip about my shooting environment and shooting location, a rooftop in Zurich, and you will see it was very dark and also a bit hazy and sometimes rainy and wet. And then I want to discuss sample images so we see what you can actually do with these long exposure settings, several minutes for instance, on that brand new Hasselblad X2D. I want to now show sample images, and I want to start with this one here So this is the view from the rooftop in Zurich, and it's a really nice image. So in terms of shooting parameters, we have here 102 seconds, aperture stopped down fairly well to f11, and native base ISO of 64. Close to 102 megapixel that image, and if I crop in by 100%, this is very, very nice. And by the way, this image was shot with the 55mm lens. And you just see a lot of details in that image. It's also a very clean image, despite the fact that we had a bit of a hazy night here. And you see so many details. And what I always like on these Hasselblad lenses, if you stop down and the way the sensor then later represents the image, you have these nice stars here on lights. Looks really, really good. But also in a closer distance here, you can look into this office building here. You see all the details, and I think in general, a really good result, exceeded my expectations when it comes to night photography with the new X2D and the new 55mm lens. Look at the representation of the letters here on the building. Nice light bursts here, but the letters pinpoint sharp. Really, really good. What I see here, I like it a lot. If you take long exposures with the camera and you do this over a longer time period, then the sensor gets hot, and from time to time you will have some hot pixels here. And here is one example. I'm not sure if I can show this here. So here you see a hot pixel, and that is something you can easily collect in Lightroom. There are not many of them. I will have longer exposure images later to show, but there are a few of them. And if you find it tedious to correct them, then don't post-process the images in Lightroom, but use Hasselblad Focus software. Because what I realized when I played with both Lightroom and Focus, Focus is calculating out these hot pixels automatically. At least that's what I saw in my images here, and they don't appear in focus, whereas in Lightroom I see them. Here another example, exposure time 128 seconds, again at f11, native base ISO of 64, and shot with the 55mm lens. And this is another example of what this camera sensor in combination with the new lenses is capable of delivering. If we look into here, that's absolutely fabulous what you see here. Lots of details, very sharp, very nice. Of course, long exposures have, their downsides to some extent. I mentioned potential for hot pixels before. You also might have overblown highlights here somewhere, but you can correct them to some extent, and the image itself looks really, really good. And you capture so many details here in these images. Look at this part of the image here. Just great, just absolutely fabulous. And if you want to change perspective, I unmounted the 55mm lens and took the same image with a wider angle and the 38mm lens. And then you get a slightly different perspective. Here again 55, here 38, and again a fabulous image. Super detailed, super sharp, super crisp, absolutely nothing to complain about. And I think this proves that this new camera system from Hasselblad is highly capable for night photography, and that's exactly what I wanted to find out in this shooting here on the rooftop terrace in Zurich. Here another perspective from that rooftop location in Zurich, and let me crop in by 100% to show you the details we get here. Very nice church tower, so that's St. Peter Church in Zurich. Then over here we get, in German the word is the Großmünster. You also see on the flags here some motion blurriness, which is the same here. It's actually representing the flag from Zurich, which you see here, white and blue, but here it has motion blurriness from the wind on that evening. Here again, here is the lake, by the way. And if we scroll around here, so many details. It is just absolutely mind-blowing what this sensor is delivering with these new lenses here. Look at that, very nice. And then we have these starburst effects on the lights because I stopped down the aperture. Also brilliant how these red lights here appear, and we also have them here. And you see that image is again a testimony that the new Hasselblad X2D is a fantastic instrument for night photography. Of course, I wanted to push the envelope and try also several minute exposures, so I went here up to 512 seconds at f11 again, ISO 64, so I had not to push up the exposure slider later in Lightroom. And of course, 512 second exposure makes the sky very smooth and very soft, but it is also very clean, that image here. And cropping in by 100%, you see we don't lose details if we go for almost 10 minutes here. There are overblown highlights again, but you can nevertheless nicely look into this office building here. And here is a part of the scene we've seen before on the first image. The mountain in the background is Mount Uetliberg, and you see the antennas here. And all the details in that image are there. Here's some starburst effects again. And I think I can conclude the video now with one last picture where I took 3 of these shots and stitched them together to a panorama, which then has about 200 megapixels. I hope my short video gave you good impressions about the capabilities and you could say the potential of this brand new Hasselblad sensor in the X2D. And I think the images speak for themselves. You can shoot very long exposures with that camera and you will get out very clean, very sharp, very crisp images. If you liked that video, don't forget to drop me a thumbs up. Stay tuned on my channel, there's always more to come. Thanks for watching, stay safe and healthy, and of course, peace out.